Hello everyone and welcome back to Always Watching. Today's foreign feature is the French film Anatomy of a Fall. So briefly, Anatomy of a Fall follows Sandra, a woman suspected of her husband's murder. The movie stars the great Sandra Hüller in the title role. She also stars in The Zone of Interest, probably my favorite movie of the year, so I highly recommend if you have a chance to watch it. In the movie, Sandra stars as Sandra, a novelist living in the French Alps with her husband and son Daniel. Her life gets turned upside down when her husband falls out of their attic window and his death is ruled inconclusive. What follows is a courtroom drama that's less about establishing her guilt or innocence and more about dissecting the fall of this relationship. So traditionally, courtroom dramas are about whether or not the individual is guilty or innocent. Now, whether or not they get away with it is a whole other storyline. In the case of Anatomy of a Fall, there are no smoking guns, there are no clear-cut answers, there are no confessions, there are no flashbacks. And this is because the director is very careful to slowly feed you information that constantly casts doubt on what actually took place that day. There's no score in the movie. The only music is this remix of 50 Cent's PIMP and this piano piece played by Daniel throughout the film. The setting is extremely effective, like this isolated home in the French Alps. The fact that the film takes place in the winter was very appropriate for their relationship, which was just cold as ice. So this movie can be divided into two parts, before the trial and during the trial. And so before and during the trial, we never actually get any real insight into their relationship. Like, we don't get flashbacks, we don't get any arguments. Like, the only insight that's given is this audio recording that took place the night before he died. And so we have to rely on witness testimony to basically decide what we want to believe happened. In terms of the victim, like, we actually don't get to know the victim all that well. Like, the only sort of information or glimpse into who he was before he died is this 50 Cent song PIMP and these photographs of them that they show throughout the house. So in terms of 50 Cent's PIMP, my first impression of Samuel was that he was probably very abusive. He's playing this song so loudly. It just felt like he was trying to impose himself on her. And so you just get this really sort of bad feeling. We never see him playing the music, and we also never see him discuss this with his wife. And the song itself is just very misogynistic, right? PIMP. And then we see these photographs of them throughout the house, and these photographs make it seem like Samuel was a very cool person, like someone who very much was successful, like would play a song like PIMP. But we find out during the trial that he was very depressed. He was an individual that did not actually achieve the success that he wanted, and he was really battling a lot of demons. And so the meaning of the song changes because now it just feels like someone trying to get their groove back, someone who has peaked a long time ago and was really struggling to stay relevant. As soon as he falls, everything before the trial is establishing whether or not Sandra could have had anything to do with it. And this part is very important because you're basically just looking for clues desperately, right? We're all looking for that smoking gun. Like, oh my God, like the attic, there's no signs of a struggle. The laptop is perfectly placed on the speaker. Again, they keep trying to reenact things, but there just isn't enough there to sway us one way or the other. And so as a result, she's indicted. And her only hope really is her lawyer. And the thing is, like, throughout the trial, you're waiting for this smoking gun. You're waiting for this flashback of what happened that day. And even before the trial, they tease it, right? They tease this, audio recording of this explosive argument before the fall. And of course, the argument isn't as damning as we would have liked. And I think her lawyer basically explained the situation very well. Like, this is not about truth. It's about pretty much establishing a narrative to get people to believe your version of events. And so because there's no real evidence and because the only witness is her son who's partially blind, all she can do is just maintain her innocence and hope for the best. During the trial, like, she's at a huge disadvantage. And one of the big themes in this film is communication. And Sandra is German. They live in France. So she has this task of trying to look innocent in a different language. Like, it's hard enough to articulate yourself in a courtroom in your native tongue. It's almost impossible to do that in a foreign country where you don't speak the language as well. To make matters worse, she's a novelist. So this just gives the prosecutor so much material to go off of. There's this brilliant scene of these TV anchors basically like reading excerpts from her novel, trying to basically establish that she's this malicious person who planned it all along. And meanwhile, she's sitting in bed like eating junk food, worried that she's going to be found guilty. And as a writer, she has this extensive vocabulary. She is someone who's able to express herself in a multitude of ways, but in the confines of a courtroom, none of that matters because everything is about trying to establish facts. But because of the nature of this case, it's really hard to water things down into yes or no answers. So that's why she kind of maintains her innocence, because there's so much she wants to say, but she's always at risk of being misinterpreted. Like, the only time she's comfortable, like, I really enjoyed her physical acting, like when she's speaking English and she takes off her jacket, because she's very careful in how she speaks, because again, maybe what's clear to her might be misinterpreted by the jury or not fully understood or just taken the wrong way. So she's just kind of like in this really tough predicament. I thought it was very telling that her son speaks fluent French. Like, it seems like the family lived in London in some time. And the reason that I think Sandra doesn't fully speak French, or her reluctance to become fluent, again, has to do with how temporary she felt this home was. Like, this is not a place that she wanted to settle in. This was never a place that she really wanted to live. And it really shows, right? It shows in her demeanor. And in the context of the courtroom, it doesn't really make her look all that great. And the problem with this trial is that it's almost impossible to put Sandra on trial without putting her husband on trial as well. And of course, this is a big no-no because victims are never on trial. And there is this perception that all victims are innocent, that they should never be questioned. And of course, like, no one deserves to die. But given the context of this case, there's really no evidence. So we do have to look at it from both sides. And the more information we get, you really do get the sense that either one of them could have fallen out of that window that day. One of the things the movie does so well is sort of balance out all the personalities, because Sandra's performance is so strong that she's constantly fighting against our assumptions. And I think it helps that the prosecutor is super annoying. Like, he is terrible. Like, at some point in time, I decided I wanted Sandra to be innocent because I really didn't want this raggedy lawyer to win. And he's trying so hard and he gets so frustrated with her. But again, like, everything here is subjective. And so he's trying to pin her down into these yes or no questions, but she does a good job of trying to complicate it. And so throughout the trial, you feel like you're watching almost like a play or it just felt like a performance. Each lawyer is trying to present the best case. There's a scene with these splatter analysts that's just so dramatic, and the way they're trying to explain how he could have fallen is just so entertaining to watch. And you're kind of in part looking for like a smoking gun, but in part you kind of believe who is able to articulate their version of events the best. Besides these kind of splatter analysts, the only other type of witnesses we get are people that were very close to Samuel. And again, this is an issue because it's very subjective. These are close family friends, his therapist. Like, if you put my therapist on the stand, I'm sure she would say all kinds of things that would make everyone in my life look bad. So again, it's not enough to convince the jury, like, I can believe this 100%. So most of the movie takes place in the trial, and again, it's feeding you information. It's kind of heightening this information through these performances. And finally, we get to this audio recording. And this is the moment where you're like, we have it. And the movie is so clever in that it only shows you their argument, but it doesn't actually show you the fight. So again, it's hard for us to visualize who did what or who could have done what. And the only thing this recording makes clear is that these are two people that should not have been together. And everything about this recording, the argument, the fact that he was recording it, like, it makes both of them look pretty terrible. So it seems like Samuel was working on a book, and one of the ways that he was working on it is that he was recording these conversations. Now, whether or not she knew she was being recorded, whether or not he cared, again, it just adds another layer to their relationship. You know, you're kind of wondering how these two people were able to stay together for so long, because it just seems like these were two people that were living very separate lives, who just had absolutely no love for one another. Is Sandra innocent? Like, this question is really up to you to decide, but the movie is so clever in that it constantly plays with the audience's sort of bias. For example, at the start of the trial, we are notified that she's been having affairs, and that she's been having affairs with women. Personally, I didn't clock that at the start of the film, that she was possibly flirting with this woman who was interviewing her. But when I was given that information, I started to think that maybe this is true. Maybe she was flirting. And I think it is true that, I know they say guilty, or I know they say innocent until proven guilty, but this is actually not the case, because subconsciously we're actually looking to prove that she is guilty. You know, I found myself kind of looking for evidence to prove that she did it, instead of just she didn't do it. And I think that just has to do with the nature of a crime. Like, as much as we want to give people the benefit of the doubt, that isn't always the case. And so Sandra's demeanor doesn't really help. It could be that she's German in a French courtroom, like that could also be it. But the way that she kind of speaks, the way that she kind of holds herself up, granted, we don't see her grieve, like the movie takes a very clever time jump. But there are times where I felt that she was almost too detached. There were times where I felt, you know, she was very defeated, right? Because again, maybe there was a part of me that thought maybe she had given up, right? Maybe she did expect to be found guilty. So the only credible witness we have is her son Daniel, and the actor who plays him is absolutely phenomenal. He plays this their partially blind son, and he became partially blind when his father neglected to pick him up from school one day. And so while he was crossing the street with his babysitter, he was hit with a motorcycle. And this accident happened when he was 4, and it seems like since then that like this was basically the beginning of the end for this couple. And you do get the sense that the reason that Sandra and Samuel stayed together was because of their son. Like, they didn't want to make him feel like, you know, they got divorced because of him. So this accident has actually just caused a lot of tension and a lot of guilt throughout the years. One of the reasons it's so hard to condemn Sandra is because of Daniel. There is no malice in him. So Sandra doesn't give us any clues. So, you know, sometimes we look to the people around an individual to help us read between the lines. But in the case of Daniel, there's just nothing. He has no ill will towards either parent. Because we don't get any flashbacks between him and his father, we get one flashback, or between him and his mother. Like, we don't really know which parent that he was closer to. It doesn't seem like Sandra was a bad mother, right? Like, all the interactions we see are that they're very close. They seem to have a very strong bond, which again just casts doubt. And the fact that her son wasn't quick to condemn her, the fact that he's not afraid of her, is already pretty telling, right? It already does cast doubt on whether or not she could have done such a thing. He's kind of watching this trial so intensely, but I mean, we're talking about communication and language, like so much of it kind of goes over his head. And so he almost ends up more lost at the end of this trial than he was at the beginning. And he like everyone else, is trying to find that piece of evidence that really proves what happened. The only sort of piece of information that he can hold on to is of this incident that involved his father basically throwing up pills. And he's kind of triggered because he remembers that his dog at one point may have swallowed these pills. And so he conducts this very sort of bizarre experiment that was quite terrifying. And that dog is a great actor. But basically, based on this experiment, he comes to the conclusion that his mother could be innocent because there's a chance that his father was someone that could commit suicide. Like, he kind of started to see the possibility of that happening. And once that set in, it was very difficult for him to condemn his mother. And I was really terrified for Sandra at the end. Again, you're waiting for this twist. We're not really sure what he really did see or didn't see. Like, again, like up until the end, you're like, we're gonna get definitive proof, but it never happens. And his testimony was really, really interesting because the way it was shot, we never actually hear like his father like mouth out the words. Like Daniel is the one narrating things for his father. And the way that he's able to kind of narrate these events really does suggest that his father was thinking of suicide. Now, whether or not the conversation took place exactly as Daniel remembers, I'm not really sure. But I think what became clear to Daniel is that this trial is not about the truth. People are just basically creating their own stories. So he decided, it felt like he decided to create a story that would be believable enough to tip the audience in favor of his mother. And Daniel, throughout the film, he plays this piano piece, and this piano piece is actually about despair and death and the uncertainty of knowing what happens next. And I think the uncertainty of not knowing what happened to his father, and more so the uncertainty of like really what happened in this relationship, right? Like he's discovering a lot about this relationship that he didn't even know. And I felt the piano piece, especially the way he plays it, like it's very choppy. Again, he only has bits and pieces, which is what this whole trial is. We just get glimpses into their life that could suggest one way or another, but again, nothing is 100%. After Sandra is acquitted, like she's obviously elated, and she makes a comment to her lawyer that was quite telling. Basically, she says, when you lose, you lose. That's it. It's the worst thing that happened. But when you win, like you're expecting something. And he says, well, maybe we expect too much. And I think what she was saying is, in the context of a trial, like you're never really exonerated. And this trial will forever kind of hang over her head, right? This is not something that will ever really go away. And I think what I found brilliant about this movie is how it exposed our own biases. Like, I had to ask myself, if Sandra fell out the window and not Samuel, what would I think of Samuel? I would think he was guilty too. Like, I would have the same opinions of Samuel as I did of Sandra throughout this trial. Again, like, it could have gone either way. And so they literally ripped these people's lives apart in hopes of trying to prove something that clearly just was never going to be proven. And as much as we want to believe in innocent until proven guilty, we all have our own biases, right? Like when someone is charged with a crime, like as much as we want to give them the benefit of the doubt, we don't. And this trial was very much about the impossibility of ever really knowing what happened. And you don't really know what goes on in people's relationships. And a lot of you are going to be watching this movie looking for signs, looking for, kind of projecting your own feelings onto Sandra and onto this relationship. And I think that's exactly what the movie wants you to do. And for that, I thought it was so well done. So overall, I highly recommend it. And you guys let me know what you think.